and welcome to Let's Get Real. My name's Sue Eldridge and here are my fabulous friends.
I'm Ali Wilson.
I'm Chris Larkin.
And I'm CeCie Wilson.
And we're really excited to have you, CeCie, as a guest host with us today.
Thank you for travelling up from London to be with us today.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
In previous programmes, we've talked about life-defining moments. So to put you on the spot, just as you arrive, tell us one of your life-defining moments.
Yeah, oh gosh. I think the biggest life-defining moment for me was just in childhood. You know, growing up at, I had a really good family unit. At 9 years old, I was molested by a relative.
Wow.
And, there was this whole thing about, we need to get initiated into a gang, so therefore, at school. And it was really interesting because I think had he not have known he didn't know what he was doing.
Okay.
Had he have known, I would have lost my virginity at 9, I would say. Moving on from that, at 14 years old, I was groomed and then raped by a leader in the church. Wow. So I would say that for me was a huge life-defining moment for me. Like massive in terms of my thought processes, the way that I was living life. Tried to speak to the church, it wasn't happening. So
did nobody listen to you?
No. I got labelled as Jezebel, at 14, although he was older than me. I'm like, really? Like Jezebel, and come to find out he was doing this to other young people as well. And that would be the life-defining moment from leaving the church and becoming a part of a gang. So it was very much about sex, drugs.
So did you stay in the gang after that?
Yeah. So I did away with school, wasn't really interested. I left school with 1 grade, which was drama, of course. Of course.
Excellent.
So drama was the grade that I left school with. But during the time of leaving school, one of the guys in the gang, he went to jail for murder. So things just got serious really, really quickly.
And did that kind of shock you into thinking I must escape, or how did you cope with it?
Yeah. It was, do you know what? To be really honest, there was so much going on because just before that I had attempted suicide. Wow. And, so there was just a lot of emotional stuff that was happening for me. And when that happened and it was in newspapers, on the news and all of that kind of stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to need to change my life. Something is going to have to shift here because if not, I'm going to be either one of the girls who got pregnant. In my day, getting pregnant young was, that's just not something that you would do. Yeah. Or it was going to be I was going to have some mediocre job. It was one or the other. Yeah. So that I would say that my whole life's journey up until this point.
I'm just thinking, I come from London and I've taught in Newham and East London areas. I'm just thinking some of the viewers might not understand the kind of gang culture and the postcode culture in London. So would you just kind of explain a bit about how that's, I mean, it's awful, but it's a big issue.
It's huge.
Yeah. For me, it was about a place of safety. Wow. You've got community.
Being in the gang.
Yeah. I mean, church. I'm in church, and that's where you think that's going to be the place where, come on.
It's going to be safe.
It's going to be safe in that place. That's what you're thinking.
Yeah. That's what it should be.
That's what it should be. It's meant to be that.
Yeah,
it's meant to be that. And it wasn't. So for me, one of my cousins was in the gang. So, and of course, on the streets, you're not going to mess about with somebody's relative. It's just not the thing to do. So it was a very safe place for me in that place. But in that place, I was very broken. Yeah. So it was very much about, I was taught from this whole grooming experience that sex equaled love, and that became the motivation of my life. Okay, well, sex equals love. Okay, cool. I can just have sex with who I want to have sex with then, because I needed to fill that void. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I say this all the time. I was like, I would love to tell you, and mind you, I'm a Christian still, because I'm still very much in relationship with the Lord, but just not going to church. Right. And it just got so intense, this void, this hole, that said, I need love. Why is nobody not loving me? Why have I been rejected? Why have these things happened to me? It didn't make sense. And at the time, I didn't know I was groomed. Right. Didn't know, because I was just the girlfriend. But the challenge with this story, and when I look back, is as he was leaving the bedroom, he said, if you say anything to anybody, you'll be in trouble. And that's when I felt my voice was taken away. Right. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, like where your voice, you just feel like you have no voice. You can't say anything. So for the next 10 to 22 years, like I just walked around with not feeling I had a voice. So I'd very much write.
Were you still in that lifestyle?
Yeah, so the gang culture for me, it was about safety. It was about feeling known, although it wasn't belonging, that sense of belonging. But when the attempted suicide, because I took the pills, I wrote the note, pinned it on my door, went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning, I was screaming, God, what's wrong with you? You know, I'm having a tantrum with him. Like, why did you not let me go? And, you know, it was, of course, over time, I'm learning that I've got purpose and things like that. But it was very much about, how are you going to change your life? Because no matter what, I was still very much connected to God. I would dream. God would send me people, you know, to come and speak to me. But then when the whole murder case thing was happening, I'm like, this isn't the life that I want. So I ended up going to college. I got more grades. After college, I went on to university to do criminology and psychology. And just really, just the grace of God just helped to just transform my life to who I am today, to the point that healing occurred. You know, I swanned off to Bethel for 5 years, did school there, and just really worked on just allowing myself to be in the presence of God and allowing myself to be unraveled and to see myself.
Was that painful at first?
Was it painful? Was it painful? I mean, there'll be times we'll be in school and everybody's in Bible class, which was one of my classes I just didn't like. And I'm like, so there's every excuse to get out. But this wasn't an excuse. This was, I feel like there's so much love here. I don't know what to do with love that I don't have to perform for.
Wow. Wow.
Like, because for me, to get love was about performance.
Sure.
You know, it was about that. If I do this, then I'll get this. If I do that, then I'll. So it was always about giving myself away. You know, to the point where, I had sex with 2 guys in one night. Now, I'd love to tell you as a Christian that, oh gosh, I feel so ashamed, but I really wasn't.
Right.
Like, for me, it was filling that void, and it was something that I loved in the moment.
Sure.
You know, but at Bethel, it was deeply painful to come face to face with myself and allow God into that space to bring healing. Massive. But the healing happened to the depth that on the 2nd of December 2016, I arranged a meeting to sit down with the guy that had raped me. Yeah, and had that conversation with him. And I said to him, listen, this isn't about me having you here as, you know, I'm trying to send you to the police or anything like that. This is a moment where you're being encountered by love and grace and mercy. And he sat there and he was like, how could you could you do this? Like, he wanted me to beat him up. And I'm like,
sure, I can imagine he would, yeah.
He wanted that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just like, no, divine love looks like this.
Come on, CeCie,
like,
I love
it looks
that.
like this,
Wow.
you know, and it's emotional even now thinking about that, because
I'm so sure.
Yeah, can you imagine for 22 years, Sue, Ali and Chris, like 22 years, this has created this life a paradigm that I was living out of, that said you're not lovable, that said you're not, you know, you're not worthy, that. You know, I've been proposed to numerous amount of times. I've been engaged once, and I'm still single.
Yeah.
And why is that? And these were the conversations I was having with him.
Sure.
You know, not to put blame on him, but to let you know, like, your behaviour
has
consequences that can affect people. I mean, my mother, my father.
Did they know what was going on?
They didn't know. My parents were not saved, and I just loved God from a young age. You know. And my parents had no clue. They didn't know until 10 years later when I was about to go on TV to speak about it. I'm like, I can't have them hear about it from somebody else. And I just about skirted around it because my poor dad, I'd never want to, you know what I mean, really hurt his heart like that. But it was very, very deep. But that conversation, I mean, when you talk about life-defining moments, there's the initial thing that happened was defining. But then since then, that conversation to come back as this powerful woman and say, do you know what? I know that what you had done to me was actually wrong. And I'm not here to condemn you, Like, I had to stop. Can you imagine, as a coach, I had to stop myself from drilling down. I could feel myself drilling down. So what do you think was happening?
So let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. Like, are you still there? Like, what's going on? Like, what was the... Were you abused in your childhood? So and I started drilling down, and I literally had to bite my tongue because I'm like, that's not my job.
Wow.
You know, but it was, I mean, and that's just really just coloured my life all the way to date.
Wow.
Today.
Now, I know, CeCie, you're a really passionate woman.
Yes.
And I know you're passionate about lots of things.
Yeah.
But would you like to tell us about the main things that you're really passionate about?
Yeah. This big question.
It is a really big question.
I think passion to me, what I'm passionate about is transformation. And, you know, I say to people, like, we've got these cups on the table, right? And if this tea, which is my lovely tea here, if I pour this into the glass and then I pour it into here and then I pour it into the pink cup, the content stays the same. But what's happened is the presentation is different. So in terms of passion, I feel like I'm passionate about one main thing that looks very different in other ways, in its presentation. But I would say that the main thing is transformation, where I can actually help people to see who God's called them to be.
Yeah.
Because there was days I was lost completely. 24 hours I would sleep.
And how do you do that? What medium have you got to be able to do that?
Yeah, coaching for me is what I'm a certified coach and also a personality specialist. So I use different tools. I do Sozo, and I really just bring everything together like a big mush, just put everything together and just walk people through that. So whether people are coaching with me, I do workshops, just to really help people to understand, like, you are so unique, you are so beautiful, all of your idiosyncrasies, all of those things, your quirk, everything makes you who you are, and there's no other person like you. Like, I put something on Facebook recently that said that there is no competition when it comes to purpose. You know, because sometimes we can think, oh, there's competition here because someone's doing something similar. But every individual is their own unique filter, and their expression that comes out of them is like nobody else.
There's nothing like it, is there? Because obviously I'm a coach and do the same, and CBT therapist, and I just love that feeling when somebody gets it,
the lights come on in their eyes.
Something change. It's just amazing, isn't it? It's
beautiful.
such privilege.
To be able to walk alongside people and see, like, I used to think like this, but oh my gosh, I can accept that I'm a leader. Because there's people that are leaders, but they're still kind of not too sure. But just a deep acceptance, like, this is actually my identity. This is actually my purpose. And to walk out, so some of the work that I do is working with people who are influential in the marketplace, Christians who are influential in the marketplace. And I see sometimes there's this disconnect, like, okay, like, I'm out there, I'm doing what I need to do. But are you walking in power?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, are you actually walking in power that is going out there to actually transform whatever sphere of influence, whatever the mountain. Like, are you walking in that? And I feel like that's really grounded in identity. Like, when you walk into a room and you know, I can shift an atmosphere.
Absolutely.
I mean, you do it, Sue. Walk in and it's a riot.
Or it's really awful, because if whatever you carry, it's true. That's so good.
I feel that, like, it's about helping people to see, and not just see, but accept. Because I think it's in the acceptance where the power comes. Like, oh, okay, so I'm this type of personality. That's okay. That's why I do that. You know, people say, oh my gosh. But not just that, but also intuitively, like, I love the prophetic, and that's all threaded all the way throughout what I do. And just to be able to just see the gold and just say, this is what I see. And sometimes people have never, ever seen it, as you know. And just to be able to see the gold and call that gold out and say, this is who you are.
I love that.
You know,
I love that.
Massive.
Wow, I'm so excited to hear about that. And thank you for telling your story. Thank you for trusting us, because it's just us, obviously, that you've shared that with. And CeCie, you know, despite what you've been through, you do love talking about sex. I've heard that.
Yes, it's true. I do. I like speaking about it because, of course, I'm Christian and I feel like it's such a taboo topic. And when I was going through, I had a contract guy, ladies.
You had a what?
A contract guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I have no idea. It sounds exciting.
So I used to have this guy where I would say, look, when I want sex, I'll call you.
Okay.
And when I call you, you come to my house, we do our bits, and then you leave. No sleeping over.
Okay.
No falling in love, none of that nonsense. When I want sex, you just arrive at my house.
Isn't that a prostitute?
Well, not quite.
Isn't it a shag buddy?
Yeah, that a friend with benefits, but he wasn't really my friend because I didn't really care.
Did you pay for it?
Nah, of course not. Nah. So I mean, with my
he
time,
did though,
with my time, maybe. So I had one of those guys because for me it wasn't about sleeping around.
No.
It was about getting that need met. So I didn't really know how to, because it was this tension between I'm a Christian woman, I'm supposed to be celibate, and I've got this void that said that sex equaled love. And even if it was just for a moment, if I could just have my hit, then let me just experience that for just a little bit.
Okay.
So I had this guy. But during this time, there wasn't anybody who I could go and say, like, hey, I'm really struggling. Like I'm actually having a really hard time with my purity because I was afraid of being judged.
Yeah.
Like the guy was there to meet the need, but there was nobody to help me address, well, why is the need there? How do you manage the need effectively? And so there was a lot of secrecy. Like I stepped into an actual committed relationship. Everything was fine. 3 months in, I don't even know how it happened. I mean, I can say I don't know how it happened because it just happened one day. And we started having sex with each other. And it got so extreme, like I took a whole week off work, moved my mattress out my room, put it in the living room to watch porn for a whole week.
Wow.
And for me, it was just a very dark place. And of course, it's a place that I knew that I shouldn't be in as a Christian woman, and he was a Christian guy. But it was still something that we were doing in secret. There wasn't anyone who I could speak to. So now that I'm, 11, this year would be 11 years celibate. For me now, it's like, okay, God has really given me some tools that are effective to help people who are in these places, who maybe have sexual urges and they think, oh, this is sin. Or they've messed up and now they feel miles away from God because it's always going to be about connection, to the Lord. So now I do workshops, I have an event, I have a podcast all around purity to normalize the narrative of sex in the Christian community and the church, because I just think it's still very taboo, like, oh, we shouldn't speak about that. Mate, when I get married, I tell you, I just know what's going to be happening. Like, don't try to call me for 2 months. Don't try to call me for 2 months. I'm not interested. I've been waiting 11 years. Hopefully, it's not going to go into 12. Yeah. But, so I really do help people to just normalize the conversation, but not just that, but how do you create an effective purity plan that's going to help you not violate your conscience? So,
CeCie, I think I have got to say, we're middle-aged, married for a long time women, and I have got to say that it is quite shocking listening to your story because of exactly what you say, because we don't talk about it. So many of us have been married so long, we've forgotten really what it's like. And so I really do feel that that there are going to be people watching this that you've given, like you've smashed the shame that they're living under. You've given them there is hope.
Absolutely.
So just because this is what you're in right now, or you were, and you're so racked with shame, you can't move out. So I'm so thrilled. I don't care whether we're shocked. What I care about is people at home feeling that there's hope, and feeling that they're not on
their own.
Yeah, they're not on their own, and they don't have to be stuck in shame. Yeah. So tell us, before we need to go for a break in a minute, but just tell us what projects you've got on. How can people tap in to what you're doing and find out more about it, so they can live in the freedom in celibacy like you at the moment? So tell us.
So my team and I, we have Purity Talks, which is the overarching brand.
Sure.
Under Purity Talks, there's a podcast. People can find the podcast on iTunes and Acast. So that's something which is just a free tool that's out there for people to listen to. And if they go to the Purity Talks website, then there's worksheets, because as a coach, I mean, as you know, like we have to have our questions. So there's worksheets per episode that can actually help to walk people through on their own if they want to do that. And then we have Purity Talks Live, which is, we're just in conversations now about it being international, where we just have a whole bunch of people just come down, we have a panel and we speak about these things. You know, we had a married couple recently who they were talking about, well, when I feel horny, I tell her, like, and this is in the dating stage, and they were just like, well, okay, well, I feel like I want to have sex with you too. Okay, we've got to go. So they just really just being honest and really open about it. So, you know, the panel comes together, people are able to ask questions and all of that. So it's brilliant, fantastic event. So that's the Purity Talks Live. And then we have the Purity Talks Masterclass, which is where we sit down and speak to people and help them work through their stuff and get healing and that type of thing. And then personal one-to-one coaching in terms of the purity. Then there's something else which is called brand authenticity in terms of the other projects, where it really is about, and this is where I work with people who are influential in the marketplace, who are Christians, is we bring everything into alignment. Like, who are you? What's your personal, not company culture, your personal culture, core values, your projection, your fivefold ministry. Like, do you know what that is? How is all of that aligned? Social impact, how are you impacting your community with who you are? Also looking at personality, what personality type are you? So these are all things that I feel when they're in alignment with each other, you can walk into whichever mountain of influence that you're in and actually impact. That's really deeply.
Wow, so, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And you know, all the details of what CeCie's been sharing with us are on the screen. So do look it up and get help if you need it. So we're just going to go for a quick break, and I'm really excited. Don't go away, because we've got Joe Frost with us after the break. See you later.
If you had the chance to start over, what would you do differently?
I wouldn't be so afraid.
Spend more time with family.
Learn sooner not to take life so seriously.
The gospel offers everyone the opportunity to start over, and you can be a part of it. Every moment of every day, God TV broadcasts the life-giving gospel into homes like yours, and we want to see even more lives changed. Become a God TV partner today. Go to god.tv or phone the number on your screen today.
Hello and welcome back. We are really excited, us Get Real gals, to have Joe Frost with us today. Welcome, Joe. It's so lovely to have you.
Yeah, so Joe, let's start with, you work for the Evangelical Alliance. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we are an organisation that represents individuals, churches, organisations, and we bring them together because we want to make Jesus known in the UK. We're the biggest organisation and the oldest, representing the evangelical voice in the UK to government, media, civil society, anywhere where Jesus can and does transform societies. We want to tell that story.
Wow. Just a little thing then, really.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Just a little. Just
Do you
nothing
like
major.
These posters? Because sometimes I see like religious posters, you know, on billboards.
Some of our member organisations do.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So different people tell Jesus' story in loads of different ways. But when you're stuck in your echo chamber and you're only hearing your version of the story, you only think there's one way of doing it. So the Evangelical Alliance loves to build a big table so that we can all get round it and learn from each other, share stories, share what's working, share what we're struggling with, what isn't being told about and what isn't being talked about. See if we can come up with some new ideas.
Excellent.
Wow.
And what's your role? What do you do?
So I'm the Director of Communications.
Oh, so it's all on you then, the billboards.
Yeah. It's all on me. So I just help the organisation work out what we want to say and how we want to say it. So yeah, it's really fun. I really, really love it. I I've not been in the role long, and I can honestly say there isn't an aspect of my job I don't love.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That is amazing.
That's so lovely. It'll all change. Oh, no. Still new. Honeymoon period.
So your key role is communication, and we had a programme the other day where we talked about how communication is one of the biggest issues we find in our marriages or in relationships. So in a corporate role, what does healthy communication look like? Trying to communicate with all these different denominations, churches, personalities?
Oh, big time, big time. I mean, at the end of the day, we are made in the image of God, and God is a relational being.
So true.
We are built for relationship, and communication is the heart of that, whether that's two people sitting having a chat, or whether that's massive organisations or governments trying to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Communication is at the heart of every form of relationship, and yet we don't invest in it. And we spend most of our time waiting for the opportunity to speak and make our point of view heard, as opposed to listening to where the other person's coming from. And I think when we learn to listen and think that actually we're not against each other, but we're probably trying to achieve the same thing.
That's right.
Then we learn much more quickly about how to be creative, how to be collaborative, how to see God's kingdom come when we invest in the relationships and the communication that is given.
But in the church, I mean, I've been involved in various bodies where they're in the church, where we do have a common goal, but there's an awful lot of misunderstanding, or actually religious positions that make it difficult to communicate. So how do you think you might be able to address that?
So
in a nutshell, please.
Personally and single-handedly.
I think one of the biggest challenges we have is that we only ever hear about differing points of view in an argument. One person says one position, one person says the other position, and then you're waiting for somebody to back down. Instead, actually hear what the problems are that are trying to be solved, see what issues people are facing. And then when we join together, when we sit around the table and take on different people's perspectives, we're much more likely to get over the misunderstandings. We're much more likely to be able to deal with it collaboratively, as opposed to this adversarial argument that we see in the media, we see in political debates, and we see in the church so much. And it's just not. It's just not how God relates to himself. It's not how God relates to us. Therefore, it shouldn't be how we relate to each other.
Very good.
Understanding, you know, when I've sort of heard people talk about communication and that wanting to talk and everything, it's like you can talk and talk and talk, but if you don't understand what that other person is, even if you don't agree, it's that being able to understand at least where they're coming from and their point of view. It's so important. Sorry, honey, didn't mean to kick you under the table.
You're great.
And of course, if they don't back down, you just sit them on the naughty step. You are super nanny, aren't you?
I channel her a lot, yes.
Okay. So sit on the naughty step until you can get the other point of view. So
I love Jo Frost. I love Super Nanny.
She's so
but
cute.
we're very glad it's you that sat next to us.
Yeah. We are with our parenting skills.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, sorry, yes, I am. Tell me about your passion for Jesus and how you like to present Jesus to other people, because that's one of my passions, about seeing people come to know Jesus.
I love Jesus.
So do I. He's just amazing, isn't he?
Amazing. And every day I get to find out more and more about him.
I know, you just never get to the end of that. No. Yeah, I'm 85. I'm looking good. This is all thanks to Tanya, who's my makeup artist. And I never cease to be amazed about how wonderful he is and learning something new about him. Tell us about that.
So I became a Christian at 19, and I'd come across Christianity before that, but I missed the bit where they said you can have a relationship with God. I just missed that bit. I don't know how.
Poor communication.
Yeah. Just wasn't listening. And then all of a sudden, God was right there, and he knew my secrets, he knew my shame, he knew where I'd come from, and he loved me anyway.
Isn't it amazing?
Wow.
Amazing.
It's just amazing.
It's beautiful.
It is.
And time again, I meet people who don't know that Jesus loves them as they are. Yeah. And they are forced to listen to their own voices or the voices around them instead of listening to who God says this person is.
Come on, preach it.
They are beautiful. They are made in the image of God. They are gloriously and fearfully and wonderfully made. Yes. And I love it. And yet people get caught up in, do I do it right? Is this the right thing? I'm not feeling it today, or whatever it is. Yeah. But every day, Jesus whispers and shouts and calls and shows how to be in a relationship with him, and I just want people to know about it because I think it's brilliant.
I love that. I think if we can hear Jesus's whispers to us in the night, his whispers of love, it just changes everything, doesn't it?
Everything.
Everything.
And we don't, again, I'm a little bit obsessed about it, but we don't listen very much.
Yeah,
but like our prayers are all about talking. Yeah. I've got 2 little girls, 6 and 4, and we've just started shutting up at prayer time. And we did it for the first time a couple of weeks ago with my little 4-year-old. And I said, should we just hear what God has to say about this situation? And she goes, okay. I said, what did God say? And she goes, well, I didn't hear anything. I heard it in here. Yep. And I was like, that's it. That's all it is. Fantastic. And she just goes, I think God's just saying that he loves us and I think we're doing great. And I'm like, well, we'll take that. How do we listen to God more? How do we be quiet? How do we allow some silence so that we can hear those whispers?
So lovely. Oh, yes. And teaching our children to do it instead of trying to learn it when you're older is just a fantastic way.
Absolutely.
And I think, too, in terms of, we're speaking about communication and just taking time, like you're saying, the stillness, but with there's so much out external stimuli, the Instagram and the Facebook and Snapchat.
Which isn't communication, really, is
it?
It
isn't, is it? I mean,
it's just noise.
It's not exactly.
It's noise. It's distraction.
Exactly. And I remember there were times where I would actually be afraid to go home and there not be any noise in the house.
Wow.
Get in, turn on the music, TV, and then fall asleep with the TV on because I was too afraid to actually hear what was going on the inside, but also that would suppress hearing God as well. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
A friend of mine was due to go on a 24-hour silent retreat, and on the morning that he was due to drive to it, he cancelled because he couldn't cope with the idea of being quiet.
Wow.
Yeah, because it forces you to look at yourself, doesn't it?
Wow.
It forces. I went on can you imagine me? I love to talk, obviously. I went on a 3-day silence. Wow. This is when I was at Bethel. It was very interesting because I had my name badge, and on the back it said, I'm not speaking for 72 hours. And when I say that, I've never had an experience like that where all of a sudden my sensitivity to, because normally when we're talking, if we're honest, we're trying to think about, well, how can I respond to that? I disagree with that. Absolutely. Nonsense. And you have this kind of like narration that's happening internally and we're not actually listening. But because I couldn't respond, I was forced to listen.
Yeah.
And you could then hear the purity of heart or the ill intentions of heart, that you could actually hear it. Wow. And I think if we do take time to actually sit down and listen to ourselves, I mean,
we might not like what we hear.
That's that too, but then we also might actually realise, like, actually, you are amazing.
Wow.
But on
communication.
Not liking what we hear and yet having a loving God who knew it anyway and calls you into transformation. It's brilliant. Yeah. I love it.
It's good to hear things we don't want to hear because then we don't change otherwise.
I started fasting after I'd had kids, I'd stopped for a while. And then all of a sudden, I discovered I've got anger issues. I was like, brilliant! There's something I can deal with. Because it just comes up to the surface when you actually get rid of the distraction, rid of the noise, and you and God go, what are we dealing with today? And he goes, I'm ready to deal with this with you. Are you ready to deal with it with me? And it's brilliant.
And he gives you choices.
Yeah, and he just does it so gently. I mean, it's like, I cannot believe you have just raised this issue in me, but I don't feel any condemnation. Exactly. I feel more loved by you than before you raised it. It's like, how does he do that? But he just does.
It's gorgeous. He loves us too much to leave us as we are.
Exactly, and that's so true. He loves us in our mess, but he loves us enough to just gently...
Amen.
Oh, I think we've found a true sister here.
And I think to say on that, sometimes, like, the communication, you know, it could be, sometimes we might think it's words, but we've got feelings, right? And I remember there was a recent situation where I felt like there was a tsunami that was happening internally, and I couldn't pinpoint it. I went to the country for 3 days. I'm like, I need silence. You know, like I came back to London. I'm like, I still haven't got any, you know, I just had no result.
You didn't know what it was.
I didn't know what it was. And then I went to sleep and I said, God, you need to talk to me, and you need to talk to me, because I've had enough of this. Now I've got things to do. I've got the world to conquer. I need to know what this thing is. And I woke up, it was a Friday morning, and I heard the Holy Spirit say, you have codependency issues. Talking about, on about, come on. Really? So then I'm thinking, oh, that's my clients. My clients have this. So, you know,
you've given me a word of knowledge for somebody else.
You know, so but then I thought, okay, well, if this is something that the Holy Spirit has brought up, then that means there's grace now to actually deal with this. So I went, sat down, went to all the resources that I've been sending to my clients for years. And I'm like, okay. And it was challenging at first. I'm not going to lie. Like, I went through what I call the shame storm. For a solid 20, I was like, I can't tell anybody this. Everybody knows that I'm a coach. I'm about performance. I'm about transformation. How can I now talk about this? Because it was just, what was connected to it was just a lot of like, oh no, couldn't possibly tell anybody that. But then when I thought to myself, no, if I'm going to choose to proactively walk through what I've heard God say, I know who I am. And I'm just going to tell the whole world. And I'll be like, these are different characteristics of codependence. And just help other people. So in the silence, I think, you know, like when we're really silent, we can help people.
I spend my life every time God tells me something. I sort of, it's like I go, this is me. I'm like, sometimes maybe I should just keep some of it to Tim says to me, darling, you don't have to share everything. Oh, really?
Bring it to the light. There's too many secrets.
That is,
there are too many secrets.
This is the one. She doesn't have a problem with that.
I'm just affirming it. It's beautiful.
Thanks, Jo. I love
you. Too much information sometimes. There is a time.
That's when
Tim's saying
too much information, darling. Really. But Jo, you've mentioned your job and your passion for Jesus. You've mentioned your 2 little girls. You know, in previous shows we have talked about what it's like to juggle all those different hats, if you like. How do you manage and still find joy in that?
God's grace is definitely a start.
Thank you very much.
I think knowing that you're in the right place, knowing that you don't have to do it all, knowing that if God has called you to have kids and be married and have a job, then you just have to trust that He's going to give you the skills to deal with that. Acknowledging mother's guilt. For what it is, a complete lie.
Explain that, because I haven't got children yet, so I need to know, I need to be educated here.
I had no idea what mother's guilt was until I had kids, and then I discovered you can feel guilty about anything.
Absolutely.
Wow. And pulling fish fingers out the freezer instead of making a proper meal.
Exactly. And then not pulling fish fingers out of the freezer and making a proper meal, and then overdoing everything or spoiling or this or that. You can feel guilty about not feeling guilty. You can feel guilty about actually having a good day. Oh my goodness, what have I missed? It's relentless. And then you just have to turn around and go, this is a lie. This is a lie. My kids are loved. My home is happy. I am doing the best I can. And when I screw up, God is going to pick up my kids and put them on the right path, because that's His responsibility.
You could say that on God TV. We've missed.
Say what?
When I screw up. Did you hear? We've just been so good. I didn't even know you could do that. Sam never put that on the list, did she?
But what we can say...
Oh no, we don't like to say those things. Sorry, I didn't mean to distract you. Please carry on.
But exactly. I mean, I had a dream when I was pregnant with my first that was all about this absolute crushing fear of how badly I was going to screw over my kids.
Wow.
And just this affirmation with God turning around and saying, yeah, you probably will, but I won't. And that's so releasing.
Wow. What would you say is the biggest thing that you had to work through in terms of being a mum and kind of like an insecurity? I know you were talking about, you know, I won't say the word, but about screwing up, like...
you just did.
Yeah, I did. So what would you say was like the one of the biggest things that you really had to work through?
Just that sense of crushing responsibility of what it means to grow a human being and put them in a position where they are confident, where they're not broken, where they're not bruised. But the fact is, we all get broken and we all get bruised, and you know that. And then you have these beautiful girls, and you know that they're going to get broken at some point. And that's so painful. And to then know that I'm probably going to be responsible for some of that breaking. And that's terrifying. And having to let go of that, because that is not my burden to carry. I have to give that to Jesus. And that's really difficult, and I don't always do that pretty much every day. But I try, and my girls and I, we try. And when I get it wrong, probably the most important thing to me is that my kids hear me say, I'm sorry.
So good.
And that is really important.
I think that's going to really, really help people. You know, I think when we're in it, and sometimes I think we forget sitting here around the table, that there'd be people out there, you know, in that circumstance with kids and feeling that they're making the hash of it and making a mess. I mean, we're at a different stage. We've
already made the mess,
and we have. But we have.
You made it through.
You know, and we have to live with it, and we have to do it. Because we can see things, and we know we made mistakes, and we know we let our kids down at times. But again, we have to go, but God,
He's the restorer.
But I trust you, Dad. And I say, I am so sorry. You know, I think how wonderful that your kids are growing up with a mum and presume a dad that know who they were. You know, my kids grew up, even though both me and my husband loved Jesus, we acted like orphans. We were brilliant orphans in the kingdom because we did not know who our dad was. But your kids, oh my goodness, I'm excited to see how they turn out. But, you know, yeah, we will make mistakes, and there'll be people out there that have made mistakes, but you know, God is so forgiving. Absolutely. And His grace, you know, His grace covers all our mistakes, and we can trust our kids and our job and the country and communication and everything into His hands. Amen. We could talk about this. In fact, don't go away, just stay with us for the rest of the week, and we'll really enjoy that. We'll just get you sorted with a few more snazzy outfits, because you look stunning, by the way. And thank you very much for joining us here on Let's Get Real, and we'll see you next time. Bye.